So this is actually, so these are actually pictures of some of the robots we've got. So these are actual robots at UCL. So obviously there's tons of, cool pictures of robots and stuff. I don't want to show you robots that we don't have, that a student wouldn't be able to work with, right? So all of these are here. So it does turn out there's a bit that's done. For instance, this is construction monitoring. So this is around the UCL East Park. This one here, by the way, out of interest, this was actually done with a project with Arup. So when you mentioned Arup, I thought, yeah, I'll have to talk about that. And so this is one using, for example, additive 3D printing. So the student who did this is a guy called Julius. Actually, Reni knows him very well. And he's just finished his PhD and he's just joined Oxbotica, or he's just finishing his PhD. He's got his Viva shortly. And so what he did, for example, in this case, was he built this whole system where you've got a mobile base and an arm that will actually do essentially 3D printed material. And the whole thing was he worked out the whole control and the interplay between those two components with that. And so there are various other robotic systems. So this one's been done with a guy called VJ, who's just kind of like gone to the Bartlett, but we can still do projects with him. And it's not too clear, but this white blob down here is basically you have a drone flying, and it basically does. It's another form of additive 3D printing. So it's imagine a drone flying with essentially a giant bottle of squirt cream, where the squirt cream will freeze. Right, yeah. And that's kind of what the idea with this. There's a lot, for example, with medical robotics here as well. So this is not a great picture, but this is, for instance, a phantom of these various things like Da Vinci's and so on. So there's a whole kind of area. So there's quite a lot of bits with stuff like hardware with that. The main these are the main modules. The main thing we actually have about it, though, and it's traditionally been, and it's going to change a bit because of UCL East, and I think Diego can talk about this as well. But where we've been stuck in the UCL main campus, we haven't had, for instance, if you think of number of students and number of robots, typically number of students, much greater than number of robots. So we've been very strongly limited in terms of what we could do with hardware and robot access with them. So the core modules that we did, I think Francesco's still using this. So you used a small robot for testing stuff like control. But for instance, when you were modeling, this was the kinematics of a robot arm. So that's what we're saying about you sort of learn the bits and pieces. And you're doing stuff like path planning, and you're doing, for instance, mapping and localization. This is where robots know they are in the world. A lot of it's basically done with recorded or simulated data. But I mean, definitely within the robotics, you do have, and I don't think, I suppose the closest is this one, is that people will build hardware in their projects as well. So one of the actual things is, it turns out that the MSc connects to UCL's got a robotics institute, so it's all very Kafkaesque, where they're like institutions within institutions within institutions. But what that is that sort of consortium of, you've got computer science, you've got mechanical engineering, you've got electrical engineering, you've got, I think, some of the Bartlett and so on. And what that means is people could share a little bit about it. So if you want to do something that's perhaps more, for electrical or mechanical engineering, there are supervisors that you can get to who will be able to do this. So the particular case here with this project, which is the only one I sort of got for highlighting that's more kind of hardware based, was, so the problem is you've got, this is a bit of foam, right? You want to pick up with a robot arm, and you don't really want to squeeze it. So it's a great proxy for picking up fruit and putting them in boxes. And what people have found is, if you try with the old robot arms made of metal and stuff like that, it's really easy to crush stuff. So if you make them from a soft and deformable material, it's just like your fingers. If there's an object and you grab it, your fingers deform a bit around it. And so it turns out that little bit of squidginess makes it much easier to pick up and hold things. And so, for example, there's a whole, people are building, there's actually a guy called Thomas, I always get his name, and Thomas George. He's actually just joined, his expertise is in soft robotics directly, and he's actually, to our masters this year, is starting to offer projects directly in this area as well. So I guess what it is we are the robotic stuff. We will move more towards being a bit more hardware intensive, but we don't have a lot of hardware right now, and we're tending to, apart from stuff like grippers and actuators, we're tending to be more interested like at the systems level in terms of what's going on, I would say.
As Simon kind of has mentioned and alluded to, in kind of direct response to your question, you get a lot of autonomy for your master's project. Within the actual core modules, you're probably not going to, as it is now at least, encounter a lot of hardware design. So I TA the controls one with the little robot that that Simon kind of pointed out, and even that is probably going to change by next year. But it's still more software based. So we're teaching you the control theory behind it. We're teaching you the systems behind it. We're teaching you SLAM and all these really relevant elements of robotics and robotic control that you're going to need later on if you want to call yourself a robotics engineer at least. From a specific design perspective, however, if you choose the right supervisor and the right group and you have a detailed MSc project, then actually you can build quite a lot of things on your own accord. For my master's, I designed a couple of PCB boards and I was able to use it as I wished. So that's more where you're likely to encounter that sort of level of design.